Hey everybody, we are teaching Tilt Brush, and this particular episode of Teaching Tilt Brush is all about using this program to introduce people to virtual reality. A lot of people are just starting to get into the headsets and learn about this technology. A lot of people are using these headsets to introduce their friends and family to how this stuff works. There are a lot of games, a lot of programs, a lot of demos that are being used, but Tilt Brush is a great tool to introduce people to virtual reality who's never used a headset before, who's never held controllers before. This is especially good for people who do not normally play video games. If you're not the type of person who's used to things shooting at you or trying to dodge out of the way, then some of those experiences might be a little jarring, might be a little too exciting to really realize what's going on. Tilt Brush is purely calm, purely passive, but at the same time, it's entirely unique and three-dimensional, and so it's a great tool to show newcomers what virtual reality is all about. So we're going to look at some ways Tilt Brush is going to be a really good tool to introduce newcomers, VR virgins as it were, into how this stuff works. Now, those of us who are used to Tilt Brush already, are used to all the tools, all the controls, there's actually a lot going on here. So even something as simple as undo to get rid of works. We don't want to have a newcomer overwhelmed with choices. So I'm going to talk about how to use Tilt Brush specifically to introduce people to VR and limit that overwhelming too many options type of thing, option lock, as it were. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pretend that I'm introducing this to somebody who's never used a headset. So we're going to reduce everything down to the basics. First and foremost, I'm going to put us in a generic blank environment. A white sheet of paper, a blank canvas. This is something a lot of people in the real world are a little more ready to relate to. Empty space, but if you look closely, we've got these little plus signs scattered all over the place, so we do have a little bit of that feeling of space right off the bat. I'm also going to switch to a simple wire in black. A pencil, as it were. So when I pull the trigger and draw, it's just going to make a simple black line. Again, this is something that I'm not going to get confused by, something a novice can easily relate to. So if I have a small brush size in black, the reason why I'm using wire is one of our unlit brushes. Unlit brushes are the ones that have no light or shadow. So when I draw with it, it's a pure line, and that's it. So a newcomer isn't being overwhelmed by a lot of things that's going on, but is now able to just pull the trigger and draw stick figures, smiley faces, anything they're normally used to already. And it's not overwhelming. They instantly get what they're supposed to do. I'm not even going to give them the second controller. I'm going to put on the headset, they're already in the white environment, and just let them start to doodle. As they doodle, encourage them to start to turn, rotate in place. Encourage them to then take a step. Start to move. Let them get some drawings in place first. They're used to drawing, they're used to that flat perspective, but then having them take a step to the side or step into what they've drawn, that is the moment their minds explode. That is the moment they start to see this idea of three-dimensionality. That's when they can start to draw above and around themselves. This is that moment where they begin to understand what we are so excited about. Three-dimensional artwork as this whole thing. We're not worrying about gravity or anything, and they're going to start getting excited. That is when we can now bring in the second control. Things like undo. So I can take back some of these pieces. The more I hit that button, I can go back to the beginning. Ooh, a little too far. But this is starting to give them now one tool at a time. First, we give them undo so they can redraw things, or maybe we introduce color. Now that I've got some black, let's now give them, quite often, this version is a little easier to understand for people who aren't already familiar with art programs. Choose the color you want, nice and bright. So again, they can get used to step by step these concepts. This is especially helpful for people who are even slightly artistic. Beginning to doodle in 3 dimensions is the entire effect we're trying to go for. Eventually, once they're used to drawing, we can now use 2 hands to move it around. Most people, even who are not VR people, on a phone we can zoom pictures, 2 fingers spreading apart, 2 grips spreading apart, 2 fingers pinch to zoom, 2 hands pinch to zoom. To shrink. So now we can start to introduce people to the whole 3-dimensional world in ways they're already familiar with. So it's easy for them. Now they're thinking about playing with the tools and not thinking about, okay, hold this in my hand, pressing fingers, which finger. That's not the point of VR. The creation without thinking about it. That's what VR is all about. So Tilt Brush is a great tool because most people are already able to doodle. Stick figures, little sunsets with the sun, that type of thing. We can already do even without VR. So using that as the bridge, not only do I have my doodle, but now I can step in, step around the doodle. Now they're getting this whole virtual reality system. From there, we can bring in environments, that type of thing. But for people who've never even had a headset on, this is a great introduction to what 3-dimensional artwork is all about. Once they see how this works, now we can start bringing them into much more interesting environments, much more detailed places, so that they have a better grasp of what they're looking at and how they're supposed to experience, how they're supposed to interact with this environment that you've put them in. And then just sit back and let them play and see what they come up with, see what creations they have, see how much fun you can have using virtual reality as a tool for creation. Tilt Brush is great because we're not under attack, usually, by different things in your environment, and people can just sort of play around without feeling time pressure, trying to get a score, anything like that. Tilt Brush, a great introduction to virtual reality. I hope this has given you guys some ideas, not to create art, but how to introduce this type of art to people who might not normally experience this type of thing. Especially any generation who doesn't play video games, but does have an artistic sense, will suddenly have their mind open to what the computer and virtual reality can do for them. I hope this was interesting. I hope this was informative. Let me know in the comments below if you're able to use this to help get more people interested in what this technology can do for them. I've actually gotten some friends who do sculpture in the real world now use Tilt Brush to sort of sketch out ideas to see how it's going to look before they move into it. I hope you can introduce friends similarly. Have fun, everybody, and enjoy Tilt Brush. We'll see you next time.